Yeah, we did it. Today in Design Chat, we're in a jungle where we like to make games as well as play games. An example of that would be Small Towers, the game down at the bottom. The game down at the bottom is currently being demonstrated by bot players. It's a two-player tower defense game. Get it? Small towers? Because it's small. And okay. But another example of a game that we made on this stream was made in Design Chat and Design Workshop. And I'll load it up because we need to, I'm going to load up Unity. Unity being a free game engine. Well, a game engine that you can use for free. Okay? And we were working from a couple of ideas that we talked about in Design Chat, and then we worked with our other stream, Design Workshop. This is Design Chat 20, and each installment has been about an hour, sometimes more, but an hour. So about 20 hours of Design Chat, about 20 hours of Design Workshop. In the beginning, Design Chat talked about what design is and what it is not. Really important stuff because, well, it's not well known. This ape really wants everyone to know what design is. It's a very useful way of working. It's also necessary in good games. Like, to make good games, you need design. To make good business at all, you need design. But we're talking about games. And then at Design Workshop, we made stuff in the Unity engine. So we're here in Design Chat. But let's take a second at this game. Let's just look. Let's just enjoy this for a second. Play. Now, this is in the editor. It's not actually a built game, but we've loaded the project, and look at the little guy blinking, and this is you, and use WASD to move, and go here to begin, and you say, oh, WASD. Okay, sure, cool. I go here. Oh, okay, level 1. All right, ready, set, race. Is it a race? Where am I going? Am I going back to the thing? Oh, it's getting small. Quick, get here. Okay, I won. All right, level 2. And so on. Now, does this actually have a level 2, level 7, a boss battle? No, it doesn't have anything more than these 2 levels. But it does have a win state and a lose state, or lose state, where you can say, yeah, I want to replay that again. Or you say, no, I don't want to replay that. But imagine we do have more levels. Imagine we have, a little bit more to go on to make it a little bit harder than just the win square shrinks. We have the core gameplay complete. Now, there's always going to be things that we could improve on, as the design process tells us. But this was a milestone we reached just last time on Design Workshop, thanks to the work we've done here on Design Chat as well. Yay us. Let's review, because that's where we are. Design Chat 20 can be all about what just happened. What just happened? In Design Chat, we said, you know what? Anyone can make games. Anyone. And you say, oh, but I don't know art or code or story. And I told you, you know what? You don't need any of those. In fact, you could make those and you won't have a game. We proved that, and then we went as far as to say, well, then what do you need to have a game? we proved it, and we said, you know what? You could have a board game, tic-tac-toe, a game you play in a schoolyard, and no, none of those have art or code or story. So what do you need, actually? And we said, well, here are the minimum requirements. You need a modest amount of player control. The player needs to be there with some amount of control. It's not just a result that happens. They are in some control, but not complete control. So it's a modest amount of player control. You need to have both a win and lose result. The game must result in something. If it's always win, well, how is that a game? Right? It must be both win and lose that are possible. You can have one or the other, and the player has some control, but not total control. I would call something without a win and lose result, I would call it a toy. There's nothing wrong with a toy. Toys are awesome. Playing is great, and you can play with a toy a lot, but the game that we talk about designing for players, what players expect when they have a game to engage in, what they expect is to be able to win or lose. And it may not seem obvious at first, but they need that lose. The player needs to accept the rules of the game. This, we found, was critical because, as we will find out later, we need the player on our side. They are a critical piece in what we called a game loop between the system of the game and their brain. They understand stuff about the game, and they affect the game with their modest amount of control, and they try to win, and the game tells them what happens next. And the loop continues. If anything breaks in that loop, the game breaks, and it's because of this necessary element, the player. We also said there's an optional requirement, an element that you could technically do without, and that is replayability. The ability to replay this game. You could technically make a game that can never be replayed, I suppose, but it would be really difficult to share with people. So it is optional, technically speaking. These other things are not optional, but we figure, you know what, we better make it replayable so we can share our games. It's not for us, it's for the player. Now I said the system of the game and the game loop. The system, what do you mean systems? Well, game design is about rules of the game. The game designer is in charge of making game rules and fashioning them and tweaking them and refining them and improving them. Game rules. And you may have heard the word game mechanic. Well, it turns out game mechanics are game rules. Game mechanics are game rules, period. It's actually quite simple. You play a board game and flip up the box and read the rules. They are mechanics, and they are mechanical. I'll demonstrate that in a second. But then we talk about game systems. Oh my goodness, what do you mean? Is it like code? No. Sometimes you call them game features. Features of the game or systems of the game. They are the same thing. They are simply a set of rules, a collection of rules that work together on one feature or one thing. A set of rules, a set of game mechanics makes a system. It makes a feature. So the game designer is really a systems designer by working on game rules. How do you work on game rules? Well, we learned that there is one particular format to the rules that you could make that will almost guarantee you've gone down to the detail you need to, and you can even code it from this point. If a condition is true, then there will be this result. That's the format. As simple as that sounds, it is very direct, it is mechanical. It is a game mechanic. It is as hard and mechanical as anything solid and made of metal. If this condition is true, then that result will happen. Because it's a rule, and it's that hard. It is a mechanic. It is that mechanical. Well, cool. So we learned about things that the designer does and what a game needs to be. But what do we do? What do we do with this? We learned that there is a process that helps the designer do what they need to do at any point. At the beginning, right in the middle of it all, at the end. It's the same process, in fact, because you repeat it over and over. The design process has steps to it that you do in sequence and then you repeat. The very first thing you do is pay attention to who the player is and what they need from this game design. Whatever you're designing, we're always designing for somebody. We're designing for people. We are designing for people, and we pay attention to what the people need. So we research the player needs. We find out what they need. At that point, we have set our focus in the right place, because it is all about what the player needs. Now we can find all the ideas to address the need that we're looking at. Among all the needs the player has, there's some need that we're going to look at first, and we're going to find all the ideas to address that need. All ideas are good. You might call this brainstorming, but wait, there's a second part to brainstorming. Sometimes people forget to prioritize those ideas. So first, get all the ideas you can. You get them from your neighbor, you get them from your friend, you overhear them on TikTok or on television, or you read about it, or you steal it. It doesn't matter. Get all the ideas you can. Right? What I mean by stealing is the ideas are effectively worthless until they're made into something. And all ideas are good. Collect them all, because your job as a designer is to hold all the ideas, especially ones that can address the needs really well. Because step 3 says, now we're going to prioritize those ideas to find the best idea. Sometimes ideas could be combined, or one is just a little bit better than the other. You negotiate that and figure it out. By prioritizing ideas, you come up with the best idea. That will be your plan for now. That is your design for now, and you test that best idea. You're trying to address that need. You have an idea to test. You make a test so you can see how well it would work to address that need. Making a test could be one of the hardest things to do in science, so you're going to spend some time on it. It is part science, part art, part science. Once you do a test, though, and you look at what the player needs versus this way to address it, you evaluate how well that test resulted. Did it actually address the need? Is there something about that need that isn't being addressed? What could we do? With new insight, because of this results that you evaluate, you can repeat the process, because you probably found new needs. You probably found new qualities of that need you didn't think about. You may even have new ideas that you can want to try out. And because it is cyclical, because you repeat the process, you are finding ideas that are better, you are testing and making sure they are good before you move on. And that guarantees it will improve. Yo, 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 Glitch, what are you doing? Good morning, sir. It's great to see you. You're lucky I looked over. You gotta use Command Type. I won't know you're here. I promise you. I'm yapping. I don't know what you're doing. We're wrapping up a fairly long effort where we made a game, and we're talking about the journey we took. So I'm going to yap for a little while longer. You get the idea. Thank you for stopping by. That's really cool. And by the way, Poutine Queen is a keeper. Just saying. So, with this process, we only need to remember the steps and follow this process. I say you can guarantee improvement if you follow this process. And you can use this process in the beginning and the middle and the end. Wow, that sounds powerful. Really? Yes. Because we started to think about these truisms, these things that are true about how we work in design and what we think about. If you're afraid to start, or if you don't know where to look, or you are wondering how you should think about the player, look to these truisms. This is just a few of them that we found, but it is always safe to go back to the player experience is one that we say over and over. Because sometimes you're stuck and you don't know what to do next, or you feel like you did it all and you don't know how to keep going forward. If this process just keeps repeating, how do you know what to look at next? It is always safe to go back to the player experience. Hey, I'm having something wrong, and it's not working the game isn't working the way I thought it would. It is always safe to go back to the player experience. By paying attention to what the player is experiencing, you will have better insight. I don't know how to evaluate this test. I don't know how to find ideas. I don't know how to prioritize this. I don't know what to test. It is always safe to go back to the player experience, and then you begin to see how to move forward. It's a truism, and it's very helpful, as is this one. If you're like, but I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do, I'm not sure it's going to be good enough, I've never done this before. Oh, well, I told you, relax. And also, because this process is guaranteed to improve, feel free to start. Literally throw anything down. Good, you started. And it is guaranteed to improve. The process guarantees improvement. Therefore, you cannot lose unless you do not start or unless you stop the process. So if you always go back to this process, you're guaranteed to improve. There's no reason to, at all, feel apprehensive about what you're doing. Isn't that very comforting? Isn't that nice? There's always more than one way to make it happen. This is true in code, this is true in art, this is true in story, this is true in all design. It's this find all ideas part that turns out to be the art part of design. It's the test the best idea that turns out to be the science part of design, and these two together are ridiculously powerful. When you harness them in this way, using this process, you can get a lot done, including leveraging the creative part to find another way, and find another way. When you see a better way, you can take it, because you're finding another way. If there is no player, there is no game. Now, this truism is a warning, because we cannot lose sight of the fact that the player needs to be a part of our game design. Literally, without the player sitting down to play the game does not exist. And with that reality in mind, you can avoid big problems like confusing the player, or frustrating the player, or forgetting to tell the player how to play. Players are, thankfully, learning machines. What I mean by that is players who play, and that pretty much includes every human and ape, they engage in a learning exercise. May not sound like it, because we're just playing games, right? But you're learning. Hey, how do I play this game? Right? You begin to learn. I can play this game better now. I know how to do this. You're learning. Players are learning machines, and to prove it, we pointed out 5 questions players will always ask. They will always ask this question. In fact, these are the first questions they will start to ask when they are asking, how do I play this game? They say, who am I? Meaning, who is my player character? Or who is the token on the board that is me? Who am I in this game? Where am I in this game? What is the landscape, the game world? Where is the place where I will operate as the player character in this game? Now, this could be a 3D game with like a fantasy world and all that, or it could be a piece on a board. Same thing. It could be multiple pieces because you're controlling an army. It could be a set of numbers that represents your ability to win or lose. Who am I and where am I are the primary questions that players will ask, but then the most important one might be, what am I trying to do? This is the objective of the game. If I know who I am, where I am, and what I'm trying to do, okay, I can start to do things in this game with modest amount of player controls to win. But wait, what are my controls? The next question is, what is working in my favor? Including those modest amount of player controls, but including, power-ups, including a key that you can unlock a door with, including a skill that you can learn, or a skill tree you can climb up and get new abilities. What is working against me? Well, there could be monsters and traps and puzzles. There could be a maze. There could be a time limit. There could be hazards like fire and lava. These things might have answers that change over time during their gameplay, but they're going to continue to ask these questions and then some, because players are learning machines. They're going to continue to try and learn how to play this game better. When a player says, well, I beat the game, and they stop playing, what they mean is there's nothing more for me to learn. Literally, that's why you stop. Do you play tic-tac-toe still? You might, but you might have given it up a long time ago. Why? Because there's no more to learn in that game. Literally, it's about learning. In asking these questions, who am I? Where am I? What am I trying to do? What is working for me? What is working against me? What they are planning to do, what the player is getting set to do, according to something we call the designer-player contract, was agree to live in the game. The player intends to live in the game, and before they do, they want to know what they're getting into. What is this promise the game is giving me? And let me ask these questions to understand what I'm getting into, and then I'm going to get into it. The player says, I intend to live in this game, and I will be this person. I will live here. I will try to do that. I will work with these things, and I will work against those things and try to win. This is the player accepting the rules of the game before they get in, and then you know what? They're in. And this is our goal. We are designing the player experience. That is what a designer does. And you know who it's all about? It's not the designer. It's the player. All of this is about the player. One of the myths that we've dispelled about the design process and who the designer is the idea that it's somehow about the designer, that the game is for them. No, it's not. It's for the player. It's for any player who comes into the game and performs their role in the game system, because they are part of the system. They are part of the game loop. And they make the game happen. To be fair, most of what happens in a game happens in their head. So thank goodness they're on our side. It's the player. So with that said, let's look at what we did. Because we talked a lot about what design is and what design isn't. When we said, okay, great, let's try something. Because it's one thing to say this is the design process. It's another thing to say you need these elements to make a game. But it's another thing to actually, make a game. And so we said, well, okay, let's start with this. Let's jump into this process. Yeah. We actually made a game, and we're tentatively calling it Jump In. I think it's actually a fitting name. We said, well, we need a who am I? And, okay, well, let's give you a character to be. Turns out it was a square at one point, but we improved over time, according to the design process, and we made it a character. We need some modest amount of player control. Okay. You can move with WASD. That sounds pretty standard. Let's go with that. So they can move around. Okay, cool. They can move around the screen. Okay. All right. What are they trying to do? Right. Where are they? Well, they're on the screen. What are they trying to do? Well, there's a goal of some kind. They're trying to get in this. Trying to get in this square. Okay. Cool. All right. What's working for me? What's working against me? Well, okay. What's working for you is these controls, sure. What's working against you? Well, you're trying to get in the square, but the square is going to shrink. And so if you don't get there in time, then you lose. So you can get in there and you win. You don't get there in time, you lose. There's your win and lose state. Okay, so modest amount of player control, win and lose result. Okay, cool. And if we can explain these rules to the player well enough, I guess they could accept them. That would be great. We can make it replayable. Okay. We worked with this easy premise on paper and imagined what this would be. We began to make pieces of it, piece by piece. We focused on the player first and actually made frames of animation and all that stuff just to make it look nice. We realized the controls really needed to go diagonal. I mean, there was lots of iteration, in other words, repeating the process to improve just this one part. And then we worked on the goal, the win square. That had its own improvements over time. But we eventually got it so that if you get in here, you win. And if you don't, you lose. And then we said, cool. Boy, this feels like a game, but how would a new player experience this? Because it's always safe to go back to the player experience. We went, oh, that's right, player's going to see this like at first somehow. How do they see it first? We said, well, let's make a menu. Let's call it Jump In. And then we'll have a start button. And then and we said, well, wait a minute. Is that the only idea? There's more than one way to do things. Is that the best idea? Let's think about some more ideas. And we realized, hold on, there's actually a problem if we say start and don't tell the player what they're getting into. How do they accept the rules of the game if they don't know what they're getting into? There might be a better way. Couldn't we just put the player character and the win square on this thing and call it a menu, but actually you can't lose this? This is just, you get there to start? Yes. That became our menu. A very simple menu that began to explain the rules of the game immediately. It says jump in, which is now perfect because that's what we want you to do to start the game. Accept these rules, be a part of the game. This is you, that's where you go. Here's how you move. Done. And from there they can go to level 1. And then level 1 can have the shrinking win square, and that's new. And they can win or they can lose. If they win, they go to level 2. We don't know what level 2 is yet. I just made this up, but, could be something. In fact, we did, in the process of design, explore and play around with different ideas, and what we found was a way to make walls. So we could actually make something like a maze. That's kind of fun. But we haven't done anything like level 2, level 3. We could just keep making more levels now that we have a core gameplay. That's cool. But we do have the mechanic that if you win, you go to the next level. That's there, for sure. If you get in the win square, you go to the next level. That's a rule, and we've implemented it. Likewise, if you lose, we have a rule. It's a little more complicated. If you lose, you have a choice. You can replay this level or go back to the main menu. So we had to implement something extra. That was the last thing we did. We asked the question, would you like to replay? And we give the player the choice, yes or no, by simply using the same mechanic, the same rule, where you go into a square. Instead of going into a square to win, you can go into a square to say yes or no, effectively making our little player character a cursor. And they just move into a square marked yes or no. This is what we made, right? Hey, jump in. Blink, blink, little character. He can move. Now, the only real animation we have is the blink, but we have frames of animation for when you are moving in different directions. You put it all together, including the ability to go diagonal and all that, and it feels good. It looks good. This is just the player control. Player character, who am I? These things together. Where am I? Well, you're on the screen. You're in this space. You do things. What am I trying to do? Well, you're trying to get in this square. There you go. And adding the details of like the smiley face, the sad face. Adding the details of like something working against you, like the wind square is shrinking, you better get there quick. Oh, whew, made it. This, and adding the text explaining that this is level 1 and even suggesting that it's kind of a time limit because it says ready, set, go. These are things that we came to over time because we went through a process. And we weren't expecting to be done the first step or the second step. We were expecting to follow the process and improve as we go, to find our way as we go, not worried about finishing or getting it right the first time at all. No. Instead, we just followed the process. Now, clearly, simplest first level in the world, simplest game we can come up with, and there is no real level 2. It's just a copy of level 1. But it could be. I told you there's a wall we can put in. I told you there's always improvement we can do. Right? But when somebody asks, how do you make a game? What's it like to design a game? I have to suggest that they try just making one. Because, as we saw in this process, you learn a heck of a lot by doing it. What we learned was it's a bunch of small steps. Tiny little steps, like drawing the frames of this character. Tiny steps, like putting the letters on a menu. Tiny steps, like making the wind square shrink down first, and then deciding how we're going to figure out if the player character's inside to win, or if they lose when the wind square disappears. Tiny steps, multiple steps, little steps, but only one step at a time. And we followed this process to get there. We didn't do all of this at once. We recognized what we needed to do by thinking about what the player needed first. And what we said was, well, player needs a game to have these things. We can use game rules and figure out how to address each of these things. And we can do it on paper, and we can test those quickly, because testing is part of the process. We need to test and make sure that our idea is actually working. Or if there's a better idea, we'll use that. Because this is all about improvement. We can always improve with this. So we were feeling free to start and safe to go back to the player experience. We were looking for all ideas, because there's more than one way to make it happen. We kept the player involved and realized important needs that the player had, because we need the player on our side so we have a game. And we answered the player's questions, because they are learning machines we used this as a sort of roadmap. What we needed to answer for the player as pieces of our game that we built piece by piece, because yes, it is all about the player. What I hope this series design chat is able to address is the common misunderstandings about what it is game design is about. Notice, although I drew a person, there's no art. Right? We made art in this game, but we didn't need to, frankly. This was a square at some point, and that was actually fine. That would still work. It just looks nicer. It's improved because we made art. Same with sound. We could have done something with sound. We did this in a game engine with code, but frankly, we don't need to. There's lots of games that don't need to be on a computer at all. You can make games. And although our game doesn't really have a story, we could add one and it could be better, but it doesn't need to be there. Our game doesn't have a story and it's still a game. You don't need story, you don't need art, you don't need code. You can be a game maker. You can make games. You can be a designer by following the design process. And I would assert and stand by the assertion that if you're not following this process, you are not doing design. If you stop here and say, well, I had one idea, it's for me, I'm not going to test it, I'm just going to trust on it, and that's good, I'm done. That's called art, and there's nothing wrong with art, but it's not design. And so it sounds like, well, design must be something, bigger. If it's better, it must be like bigger and harder and all that stuff. And I say, well, it's bigger in the sense that it takes a while. It's a lot of small steps. But each step you are sure about because of the testing. And because of that, it's actually easy. It's small steps. That's easy. And you are sure that last step worked because you tested. So the next step is going to be easy. If you think you're going to go all the way to the end and have a game, if you think it's going to be a AAA game and you've never made one before, well then, yeah, that's hard. No, those games are made with hundreds of people over years. But we made a game. We made a computer game. We made a computer game, and it kind of looks like a game. And this game did not take years, and it did not take hundreds of people. In fact, although it did not need to be a computer game, we did one. And we could share this. We could give it to people and they could play it. We could keep improving it and make it even better and make it look more like a game. Music, sound effects, story, levels 7, 8, 12. We could have a boss battle. I don't know. Is there combat in this game? I'm not even sure there is. The point is, this meets the minimum requirements for a game, and that's enough to say this is a game. Even if this were on paper and you could play it as a game, or if this were a card game and this could be a game. Even if this were a game you play on the schoolyard, this could be a game. Like, you can make games. All you are working with is game rules, and you're paying attention to what the player needs. And you're improving step by step by step. I hope you understand the reason I'm spending this time is because I feel this is very important to make clear when, frankly, this is never clarified for people. People don't know what game design is. Now you know. You've actually seen it in practice. People don't know what it takes to make a game. But now you know. You actually did this yourself with me. What we've done is take a few steps and take a few steps and take a few steps. And in the process, we built up a game over time. And this really was a collaborative process because although I enjoy making games all the time, this is literally the thing I do for fun. I opened this up to Twitch and the audience that comes by YouTube so that you see this too. And so I'm doing it with you. Right? We are doing it for the player. And so now you know what it's like to make a game. You happen to know what it's like to make a computer game. Sometimes it's technical, sometimes it goes long, sometimes it can be a bit confusing if this ape gets it wrong. But you know what? It's okay if you get it wrong. It is always safe to go back to the player experience. It's okay if the way we tried didn't work, because there's always more than one way to do a thing. It is okay that we spent the time we did, because we are now learning what it is to present this gift of gameplay to other people. Gameplay that satisfies them, answers their questions, and gives them somewhere to live and play inside our game. Wow. That's a really powerful thing. It's not trivial to say the player will live in the game. They will actually begin to pull away from the real world in order to pay more attention to what is happening in the game. This phenomenon has been known for a long time. It was a historian long ago who suggested this has been happening with humans, since we began to play, which is pretty much any creature plays to learn. And what we humans do when we play games like these, like chess or like cards or like video games, what we do is pay more and more attention to the game. We have to pay less attention to the real world. And in that way, our game rules building up to game systems and making the game world and the player character and their experience is, first of all, real because it's in their head. It is real because it's in their head. I'm thinking of a line from Dumbledore in a Harry Potter movie. It's real because it's in their head. And also, this is something we made. We have the power to suggest things that they should learn. We have the power to suggest what they should realize, what they can do, what more they can do. In this way, what we've done in Design Chat and Design Workshop together is explore how making games and design comes together to make play experiences for people that we can feel proud of. This has been An Ape in a Jungle. This cartoon ape in a jungle likes to make games as well as play games. Have you noticed that? We make games. And you know now that playing games is one thing, and it's a very cool thing. You know this. You're watching Twitch. You're watching this video about a cartoon ape in a jungle and games. You know how valuable it is to be a game player. But after all this, you know now that making games is an entirely different thing. And you know that you can do it. That's amazing. Yay, you. Now, if you do come by, please do Command Thai, because Command Thai lets me know you're here. And I might be yapping for an hour straight and not be paying attention to chat. I'll try. But I'm probably going to be focused on things because I really enjoy games, I really enjoy playing, and I really enjoy making them. And I think you do too. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching this. You might just be curious, well, what is this? I hope you have a better idea of what it is. I promise you, it is this. And there's nothing more about it. It's not voodoo. It's not magic. It is not out of your reach. You can make games. So come by the jungle, hang out, talk to us about games that you made on paper, or cards, or a board game, or even a computer game. Did you know all the software we use is free to use? If you're watching this on anything but a mobile device, you have everything you need to do what we just did. Until next time, have fun, do well, be good, stay safe. Well done, you. See ya.